Okay, looks like we are live, and before we begin, even I just want to apologize for last week. I thank everyone for allowing us to postpone. I did want to update you all. My daughter's doing fine. It's funny. Today, I actually ended up taking her to the doctor. Because her feet, so last week when I canceled or postponed our live discussion, she had just had a fever, and I was like wanting to monitor it, just with her and everything. And then a couple of days ago, she started to get like a pretty significant cough. And last night she kind of had a little bit of an episode, and because she has heart disease, breathing is an issue if she has any kind of respiratory issue. So she had kind of a little episode last night, and I was like, okay, I'm taking her to the doctor. And you know how that goes. It's kind of like when you take your car to the mechanic. Mm-hmm. So I took her to the doctor, and she's fine. She does have a cough, but they're just like, you just want to let her get it out. She doesn't have RSV, which is what we were concerned about because that's a respiratory thing. But we did test for that, and she was negative. And then like literally we got home from the doctor, and like the rest of the day she was like hardly coughing, hardly doing anything. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So it's all good. So thank you everyone for the postponement. I appreciate that. Hi, Cool Gamer. Nice to see you. So thank you for letting us postpone. Tonight we'll be discussing Diary of a Bookseller by Shaun Bythell. And as a bonus, I will also be talking a little bit about another nonfiction that I read during the month of November called Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come by Jessica Pan. So if you're interested in that, that'll be after we're done here with Diary of a Bookseller. So if you are watching this in replay, I would say probably fast forward an hour if you're only interested in the Pan book, which will just be a short discussion, not a full hour, probably more like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, more of a review / discussion. So before we get into the Bythell book, let's find out what we'll be reading in January. Mm-hmm. As you know, we do skip December for the holidays. So Laura, you want to go ahead and talk to us about what we'll be reading in January?
Yep. Yeah, we had 3 nonfiction titles, kind of all in the self-improvement, self-helpy kind of vein without being schmaltzy, hopefully. And the very clear winner of the 3 of them was Atomic Habits by, is it James Clear? Yeah, mm-hmm. James Clear. So that's been popular for years and years. And I don't know if anyone here has read it already. I have not. I've just seen so many people talk about it, and I'm glad to finally have a chance to actually read it. So we'll be reading that in January. Our next date will be January 2nd. That will be a new release date for us for DoubleBookedCo at 8 our time, Central Time in the US. And then at 8:30, we will have reading sprints right after that. So feel free to start then, or not. Ask it for Santa for Christmas if that's what you celebrate. I know Santa brought me a copy because I bought it for myself and told my mom to wrap it for myself. So I know I'm getting it from Santa. But yeah, we're going to be reading Atomic Habits, and hopefully it will help all of us just make our lives a little more efficient maybe, and I don't know, improve somehow.
Yeah, so for sure. Mm-hmm. I know I constantly think like, oh, I'm not going to do resolutions because I never complete them all and everything. But I don't know. It's so ingrained, I think, that like whenever it comes to the end of the year, I'm always like, okay, I'm going to change something. Even if it's just one thing, I'm going to do it. Yeah. It's hard to get away from, I think.
I know. If I don't have something already set, I'm like, but I should do something real quick. So like the 31st at like 10 p.m., I'm like, okay, what am I going to do for next year? Like I can't do it.
Yeah, I know.
Trying to be chill. I don't have any chill.
Yeah. I know, even my Goodreads goal, I think I still have like 11 or 10 books that I need to do to read 50 books for the year, which I mean, it's nothing to shake your head at. I mean, it's not bad, but like it's also like a really low number for me. So it's like, I can't believe I still wasn't even able to do it. But I'm like, I'm going to get 11 books. I'm doing it. I'm going to be able to finish 11 books. It's doable, you know?
Yeah.
Looks like Allie's here.
Hey, Allie.
Thank you. Thanks, Allie. Yeah, she's a trooper.
She is.
Hi, Andy.
Hi, Andy. Andy, I sent you an email back, but I put it in my drafts folder and didn't actually send it. So I will actually send it to you very soon. I noticed that right before I joined. I was like, oh, you idiot. That's why you haven't heard from her, because you didn't actually send it to her.
I hate when that happens.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I'm really bad about, like, this happens a lot when I do, like, Marco Polo messages. I'm, like, responding to the person as they're talking. And then, like, for me, like, somehow when they're done talking, I, like, just close the program down and, like, go on my merry way as if I've responded. And then, like you, like, I wonder why they haven't responded. And then I go back in and I see that I did not respond.
Yeah.
And it's been, like, 3 days. Terrible. But yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and talk about our Shaun Bythell book. So if you're unfamiliar, this is The Diary of a Bookseller. It's nonfiction, and it is about Shaun Bythell, who is a bookseller in Wigtown, Scotland. Is it Wigtown?
Wigtown.
Yeah, Wigtown. And there is a second that he wrote as well that is called Confessions of a Bookseller. So you have 2 books that are quite remarkably the same, other than the fact that they're just every entry is a little bit different. So it's a diary, essentially. I actually, like, last year or the year before, read the second, not realizing it was a second of. But I can't tell you, I don't, like, it's not something you really recall that easily, because it's not like a narrative where you have, like, these things that happened and it had a climactic, you know, portion and then it ended. So as I was reading this, I was having a really difficult time, like, wanting to devote the time to finish it. So I actually only have read about 120 pages of this, but I feel like I kind of, like, I get it. Like, I've read this one, I read 120 pages of this one, so I get it. I get it. So, as we always do, if you were to rate the book, what would you rate it as far as 1 out of, or 5 being 1 to, oh my gosh, I cannot talk today.
1 to 5.
1 to 5, what would you rate it?
I'm giving this a 4.5. I really, really loved it. And this got me into reading again. Like, I have been in a slump for quite a while. Well, this whole year has been slumpy. Because, like you were talking about before with your number, like, my number this year on Goodreads was 75. It has never been that low. And, like, I hit it, but fairly recently. Normally I would hit that in March. Like, so this really helped kick me into reading again. And I just loved it. Like, it is very samey, but it was like returning to friends again. And I would limit myself to 50 pages a day because I didn't want to just, like, binge it and have it be done and be like, well, what the hell? Even though there is that second one. But I loved everything about it. I liked the humor very much. I liked all the characters, not only of people that, like, are regulars in the shop and that work there, but also then the weirdos that just, like, make appearances that are just like, how do you function in your day, person, you know? Like, I just loved everything about it. I liked the format. It just sort of hit just right for me. And 4.5 running up to 5, I think, on Goodreads, I think is what I did. But yeah, I just enjoyed the heck out of it. And I am going to start reading the second one, Confessions, pretty shortly. I want to finish a couple of other books first. But yeah, I really, really liked this one. Very comforting. And you?
Well, I will finish it just because I'm already halfway through it. I might as well finish it. And really the reason why I can't finish it is because I'm very slumpy right now. So, like, when I am reading something, it needs to be something that I really fly through. Whereas this one, I feel like I'm reading every detail because it is so interesting. I am giving this where I stand right now, and it may change when I finish it, but like it's a 3-star, like a
Mhm.
solid 3. Like I'm enjoying it. I do like his sarcasm. I do like his like internal responses
Yeah.
to customers. I like the idea of getting to know this town through like a local, and knowing that this is nonfiction. So knowing that this is a real place and these are real things that have happened, that to me is really intriguing, especially since I've been to Scotland. So some of the things that he's saying, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I can see that. I see that happening. But also like when he mentions like some Americans that come in, I'm thinking in my head like, I'm gonna remember not to do that, because sometimes that's true. But kind of talking about rating in itself, and we ask this a lot when we read nonfiction. Do you think we can truly rate nonfiction?
I know. I go back and forth on this. Like sometimes I just rate everything a 3 that's nonfiction, because it's someone's experience. Generally speaking, it's about their life. At least a lot of the nonfiction I read.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of crappy. Like I think your life is only a 2-star.
Yeah.
But I vote mostly about enjoyment for any kind of book, as if I liked it or not, let alone anything else. So like I said, I flip flop. But I mean, I really did like this one. So I feel like it's okay to go higher than a 3. But like, yeah, my default for nonfiction tends to be 3, because what do I know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
it's weird, but
I think you can rate it, but typically when I rate it, it's like either I go straight for my enjoyment, which is what I kind of say the 3 is for me, is the enjoyment factor, or I just take all that out and I just do the way it was written. If it was readable, if it was well written in a sense. But yeah, like how do you rate someone's life experience? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's look into the peanut gallery over here. I feel like Allie has finally joined the DNF club.
Well,
nothing wrong with it per se, but just found it boring.
Don't apologize. No, I totally get it, because not a lot happens. It's the same thing almost every single day. I get it. It just hit just right for me. That's fine.
Made it 77% through and called it done. Not my kind of book.
That's hilarious. I love it.
However, I am going through a weird reading period at the moment, so got about 40% thought I just can't be bothered to read this anymore. I mean, essentially, that's kind of what happened with me, too. I don't know what the percentage would be. I guess that's probably 40. I got to June. I basically got to June, and then I went ahead to my birthday, and I saw what happened on my birthday, and then I was like, I'm just going to call it done right now for the time being. So that's funny. I think you can rate nonfiction memoir. Oh, sorry, my finger. Memoir by how well it's written, structured, etc. Yeah. And I do rate nonfiction as about enjoying it, but not really judge their life per se. Yeah, that's true. I mean, because there are some, in my experience, there are some like memoirs that I have enjoyed like a lot, like, and it's not so much about their enjoyment, but just the way that they narrate it, the way that they tell you that story. And then there's some memoirs where it just feels like a regurgitation of facts. And I'm just like, I want you to be a storyteller. So I think that's where the enjoyment comes in, is like, even if it was like the same story, like the same, say for instance, it was a celebrity memoir. And one they do one version of it where it's like a story. It's like very theatrical because whatever. And then the other one was just like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. I think that's where I feel like you can rate, because essentially one is better than the other because you enjoyed it more, even though it's the same exact story. If that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, so I mentioned this, but did anyone like notice your entry of your birthday or any other significant dates? Did anything like really fun happen on your date?
I did not even notice.
You're the 18th, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Yours doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
On mine, I think he something about a boat. Let's see.
Yeah, short one.
Yeah. Lori was in charge.
Oh yeah, I remember this entry for some reason, but I didn't twig that it was your birthday.
Yeah.
Which is stupid because I have another really good friend who's the exact same birthday as yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any entries that really stood out to you as far as being like really memorable?
Not particularly. I think just the ins and outs of running their particular bookshop in Wigtown, because it is such a large shop, number one, and number two, that they have that festival bed and that they know so many people in the book industry that just sort of like pop in and pop out. Like the amount of people that stay overnight was sort of surprising to me. That was fascinating. And then hearing about like the festival, not that there's a lot about the book festival back end, but it does talked about. That was interesting to me. I don't know. Also, I found it kind of amusing, and I know it makes sense logically, but I just had never thought about it much before, that he goes to evaluate and buy collections of books at people's houses. Like I get that that's a thing, but he does so much of it, and I didn't expect it to be such a regular occurrence, you know. And that was interesting too, to hear about like where he was going, and then what the people were like he was buying from, if they were alive or dead, and what kind of collection they had, and what their house was like and everything. Because I'm nosy. I love looking at people's houses. So that stuff was really standing out to me. Like, oh, he does that a lot and travels around a lot, and that's okay. Like, as a business owner, I always assumed that you would have to be there, or you would feel obliged, and this says a lot about me probably, that you'd have to be there every day. And he's not a lot of the time, because he's buying things or he's off. Like, he took a week off to go like boating or fishing with a friend, and they go off to like hike or bike ride or whatever, and that's fine. So that was surprising too. Like, oh yeah, you can have a life. Maybe that's very American of me. I don't know, but that's the kind of stuff that stuck in my head. And just the characters too, of like Nikki, like what a strange lady she is. I mean, Foodie Fridays, I gagged several times hearing about the food. Like I don't know. I just enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, hearing about the non-bookish side, like the non-direct book selling part, was really interesting for me, you know.
Yeah.
How about you?
I was more or less, because you know I always overthink everything. So I kept thinking, like, does he make any money doing this? Like, isn't that the whole point of him writing this, is like he's making fun of the fact that he's like in this industry that's like failing and Amazon's taking over, and yet in half of the entries he's buying books.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like a little small part of me wants to go to every single entry and like add up the till.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and see what the total is for the year. Because, like, yeah, he goes out to all these, like, estate sales, essentially, and are buying full collections of books. And then people come in, and he's buying their books. And I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, and I get that that's part of it. Obviously, that's how he gets the books that he sells.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always like, is he making any money? And then he has all these people working there. And then what really stuck out to me was the one where he wrote a recommendation letter for that one girl. And he basically was like, she's shit, but I would recommend her. Like, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she sucks at life, but you would highly recommend her.
Yeah, that made me laugh really hard. Mm-hmm.
I did not. Yeah, I was like, what's happening there? the thing about like in the very beginning of the book, and obviously because I've only read the first 120 pages, but with the cat door and the one cat, and then how that ends, how the cat, they find the cat and like neuter it. And then the owner comes out of nowhere and is all pissed.
Yeah.
Their cat has been neutered.
Yep. Oh, wow.
I was like, well, that's what you get. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, that's what you get. That kind of made me laugh a lot. But yeah, I think like Allie kind of mentioned, a lot of them were kind of redundant for me, so it's hard to say. I know oh yeah, here, I'll read it because I did. So this is a library book, so I don't feel as bad about it, but I dog-eared a few pages. But this one says, to whom it may concern, reference for Sarah Pierce. Sarah worked Saturdays at the bookshop, 17th North Main Street, Wigtown, for 3 years while she was at the Douglas Ewart High School. When I say worked, I use the word in its loosest possible terms. She spent the entire day either standing outside the shop, smoking and snarling at people trying to enter the building, or watching repeats of Hollyoaks on 4OD. Although she was generally punctual, she often arrived either drunk or severely hungover. She was usually rude and aggressive. She rarely did as she was told, and never in the entire 3 years of her time here did anything constructive without having to be told to do so. She invariably left a trail of rubbish behind her, usually consisting of iron brew bottles, crisp packets, chocolate wrappers, and cigarette packets. She consistently stole lighters and matches from the business and was offensive and frequently violent towards me. She was a valued member of staff, and I have no hesitation in recommending her.
I love it. I love it.
Oh my goodness. It's funny. Have you ever had iron brew?
No, I haven't. I did see some for sale at World Market down here. I was going to buy it and went back to get it, and I couldn't find it again.
Yeah.
No. I know you have, right?
Yeah. It's whatever. It's like orange soda, but not. It's not as seltzery.
Okay.
Like it doesn't have as much carbonation in it, but it's not like people are serious about iron brew over there, and like I thought it was okay. I didn't think it's that great.
I know. Didn't they change it to make it a little healthier? Like they lowered the sugar a few years ago. They did something to change it, and people got so outraged they put it back. Like they couldn't.
Oh, yeah.
That cracked me up too. It was like, oh, Scotland.
Yeah. I am sorry. I've been skipped. I'm not skipping anybody. I'm going to go ahead and go back through these comments real quick. Weird obsession with the first solo around the world race.
Interesting.
Books, about it, not well written, but the story is so compelling, would rate it them quite high. Oh, in so many ways it doesn't exist. But you're so young. You're so young.
I know. You are young.
But it stretched me the night we read it on Sprints. I was bored. Yeah. It's all good. A book about going to buy book collections appeals to me. The book felt older than it actually is in terms of how he mentions the impact of Amazon, but I think the view distorted by being a bookish person, perhaps at Amazon. Yeah. It's hard when books start becoming dated, because a lot of the stuff that he mentions, it is kind of like, yeah, and I mean, because Amazon, it used to be all, wasn't it just all books?
It started out just books, yeah.
Yeah, because when I was getting my master's, I think I got all of my textbooks from Amazon because it was so much better deal than going through the university, like by a lot. There was a entry about people thinking they were bookish, and I don't know, I must not have put a thing, but I thought it was interesting because, us here on BookTube and all of our friends, we consider each other bookish, right? But what does that mean, and what was his thing?
Something like people came in and they were like, they didn't want to buy anything, but they were bookish people. Like, they made a bookish person, but they asked about a book and they had it and they didn't buy it. I think they laughed.
And that happened several times. Like he mentions that a lot. Okay, so I found it's the entry of March. It's under George Orwell's quote, but it says, "Really bookish people are a rarity. Although there are vast numbers of those who consider themselves to be such, the latter are particularly easy to identify. Often they will introduce themselves when they enter the shop as book people and insist on telling you that we love books. They'll wear t-shirts or carry bags with slogans explaining exactly how much they think they adore books. But the surest means of identifying them is that they never, ever buy books." So true. It is so true. I feel like that is true because I've on a couple occasions will find I'll like see people with like a t-shirt that will have like a quote from something, and I'll like say something about it and they will have no idea what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If you recall, when we had that craft fair, 2 years ago? Was it 2 years ago? Yeah.
It was last year.
Was it last year?
With that lady and the quote from...
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. When she was in... It was a mother-daughter, and they were standing in front of one of our things, and it was a quote of, "Is a raven like a writing desk?" And they both looked at it, and the daughter, who was probably in her 20s, looked at it, read the quote, looked at her mother, and her mother was like, didn't know what it was from. And she goes, "Edgar Allan Poe." And I wanted to look at her and be like, "It's from Alice in Wonderland. Like, what are you talking about? Edgar Allan Poe." Like,
she saw a raven and her brain just went there.
Yes. Like, so it's so true. All these bookish people. And I'm not saying that I'm like the top of the tier or anything. I identify as a bookish person, but I actually read and I actually buy books, and I have bookish bags and stuff, but not nearly. Like, I have like one or two. I think I have one or two bookish t-shirts. Like, I don't have a lot of that kind of stuff. I have books. I have a lot of books. So I found that portion pretty hilarious. But yeah, totally. I think, did I miss?
That was the second half of that.
Okay, yeah. So, the story about being a big bookish person, and then still news non-bookish person, but I feel like it's sort of a book that non-bookish person would also read. Yeah. I think it said too that this book has been translated to 23 languages. So it's probably, I would assume it covers a lot of things that any reader would probably be interested in. How was the narrated? What accent did they have? Yeah, I'm trying to remember, because I read this one physically. So Andy, do you know? And do you guys feel the author is not a person who should be working in retail? Actually, I think he held up quite well. I think he held back a lot. Like, I think a lot of what he's saying in here is all internal dialogue. Like, I don't think he actually said a lot of these things to these people. I think it's all like the after the fact. Like, whenever you have like an altercation in public, and like an hour later you're like, I would have said this, this, and this. I think that's really what it's about. Now, Nikki, I don't think she has a filter.
No,
certainly. I think she probably said a lot of things to a lot of customers.
Yeah. I know. I see your point, Ellie, but he also reminds me, and maybe it's just saying a lot to me too. He reminds me so much of Black Books, like, not obviously as offensive by a long shot, but it reminded me of that. And it seemed to me like, as a character, as a person, like with his quirks and everything, Shaun, just the person that he is, it seems sort of fitting in this could be like a stereotypical quirky British independent bookseller kind of person. Again, nowhere near as gross as Black Books or anything, but it did kind of remind me of that. So it seemed true to me. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of know this a little bit. But again, I only know that stuff because I watch a lot of that TV and documentaries and read books like this because I'm super cool American. So yeah, take that as a grain of salt. But he seemed believable to me.
Andy says it was annoying. Oops, it was an annoying narrator. I mean, how much he enjoys his job. Right?
Yeah.
Treats. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. I think what's interesting about this is that there's so much. I think what's interesting about this is that he has a presence. So he has a Facebook following, and they know that he like publicizes his interactions. So it almost makes you wonder, like, how many of these interactions are people trying to like find out for themselves, kind of thing, too. Which I think is, if I can remember correctly, I think you see more of in the second, because in the second it's like a year after this or sometime after this. I think it's a year. So yeah. And he is very nice. I definitely agree with that. But yeah, I don't know. Has anyone else worked at a bookstore? Does anyone have any experience that kind of goes along with what he's saying as far as the people that he's interacted with?
Yeah, I haven't, but my book club I was in for a long time, it was composed of all employees of Barnes & Noble except for myself. So I hear and heard a lot about all these various things. So that part rings true from stuff I've heard. And also one of my dad's former coworkers who retired early, he opened up his own independent bookshop in Cedarburg. My dad would talk to him occasionally, a couple times a year on the phone. And we went up there once to visit him at his shop. And just a few of the things he said were like bang on things that were in this book. And that was, my dad's been gone for 10 years now. So that must have been 15 years ago or something. And it was so, like, sometimes I was like, oh, he said the same thing as Shaun's saying right here. So, I mean, it seems from my limited access, not actually working one myself, it seems pretty accurate. And all about monsoon and everything. I mean, it's the same kind of crap. Like, it just doesn't work sometimes. You just don't get ratings, and then you get lowered and you get kicked. Like, I've heard that too from, again, my dad's friend. So
yeah. Yeah. I think I worked at a bookstore for like 2 weeks. And then I found out I was pregnant, and with that I was very fatigued, very much not physically feeling like I could go to work. Plus I was making like $9 an hour, and I'm sorry, you can't make me go anywhere for $9 an hour if I'm feeling sick. So what I think happens a lot of times with people like us who are bookish people is we want to tell everyone else about all of the books, or we want people to ask us about books and ask us for our recommendations on all of that, and like have that like dream, sequence where you have this great conversation and they buy all the books. And it's not. It's what Shaun shows us. Like, in that 2 weeks, I never had anyone ask me for a recommendation. I never had any good conversations at all. It's literally all it is people walking in with piles of gross books that they want you to give top dollar back to them so they can buy other books. And they don't even want to talk to you about anything because they know best. And in turn, like, all you're doing is like judging everyone's, and I don't think I did this because I was so involved in just trying to learn what I was doing, but the people around me who worked there, I feel like just were judging people when they were coming in, like what they were reading and stuff, which I think is weird because they're reading, so whatever. And just complaining about how little they make in that industry. And it's kind of like, then why did you buy a bookstore? You know? So, and I think my number one grievance with people who I worked with in a bookstore is like not accepting other people's interests in books. Like your interests are better than their interests. Like, oh, I love this author and everyone should read them because they're the best author ever. And I can't believe they read this. That's smut, or that's dumb, or it's like, no, you get your opinion and they get their opinion. Everyone gets to read what they like to read. Like, I don't understand why you're making this like weird internal like hurricane for every person that walks in that doesn't want to read the book that you think is the best book ever. So I think for people who have worked in bookstores, this is like a huge like camaraderie moment, because you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I had to deal with somebody like that. Or yes, like every time someone walked up and was like, oh, will you take like $10 less than what it's all on there? I was just like, you know how much those are discounted?
No.
Like,
I can't ever doing that. I mean,
yeah, I've never done that. Like,
no.
It's there's a price on it. I did laugh, however, like when he made the comment about how people, like, if there's not a tag on something, how they'll be like, oh, this must be free. I do that everywhere I go. Like if I'm at a I don't know, a Pick and Save or a grocery store and there's not a price on something, I will be like, oh, I guess this is free. Like, it's just like a funny thing to me, but like realistically, I know that it's not free. But that did crack me up when people were doing that. But yeah, when they're like, oh, will you take 20 when it's like 38? I'm just like, why? This is not a like rummage sale. And even at rummage sales, don't do that either. But like, I thought that was rude. Like they've discounted all of these. They've priced them to what, they feel like it is worth. And then the comments too, like, oh, it's cheaper on Amazon. Well, you're not helping your local bookstore by doing that. And now, don't call me a hypocrite, because everyone knows I do not like paying anything for books. Like, I go to the thrift store for my books, and I have on occasion gone to a bookstore. I've on occasion gone to a used bookstore, and if I don't like the price, I don't buy it. But I usually do not go to Amazon for it. And Amazon's prices are still too high for me anyways. I just don't buy it then. But yeah, that was shocking to me. Like, all the people that would just be like, will you take less for this? Like, I just didn't understand that. I've never been that kind of person. So I don't know. Weird. Allie worked in greengrocers with young people taking the Mickey in terms of asking for discounts and making non-funny jokes, and definitely a thing. Yeah. I mean, yeah, everyone wants a discount.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. My family, so I have 3 younger brothers, and 2 of them are in the military. And my sisters-in-law, one of them is very much like, everywhere they go, she asks for a military discount. Like, everywhere they go, she'll be like, do you have a military discount? And the other sister-in-law doesn't say anything at all. Like, they don't ask for it. They don't care. Like, they'll pay whatever it is. So it's funny to have those 2 dynamics, because then when we're out together, and it's very rare, it happens in like once every 5 years. And we're at like, it happened once we went to a restaurant and they were like in line together. And the first one was like, do you have a military discount? And the other one's like, oh God. And then turn around, aren't you going to ask for the military discount? It's like, no. So it's just people's like way of how they do things. Like, it's just funny because people have different attitudes towards it. And some people clearly don't mind asking for discounts. And I don't know. It's funny. Making same jokes and thinking they're the first one to make it. Yep. Definitely. Ay. Too funny. Well, switching gears a little bit, what do you all feel about like the style of the entries? So we have the entry for the day, of course, but then it also starts out with like online orders, how many there were, and then how many of the books were found. And then the entry closes with the till total and then how many customers they had in. What did you think about that format?
I really enjoyed it because it provided a little bracket for every day, for most days, because a couple of days he was doing other things. But I thought it was interesting too, because I just sort of assume that you would be able to find every single book. Why wouldn't you find every book? But in hearing how large it is, and then seeing photographs and then now videos of the store too, I'm like, oh, I totally get why stuff is misplaced. So I get the whole like sometimes you have 0 books found thing. But yeah, I did really enjoy that. And like you mentioned earlier too, it's interesting to see not only how many customers came in every day, like sometimes how few there were, and then how relatively large that till total was. But mostly it was the opposite, like a large number of customers and not a very large till amount. That was interesting as well. But I don't know, I really enjoyed it, but I can see how it would be samey and annoying at the same time too. But it worked for me. What did you think?
I didn't mind it. I, like you, was interested in like how come he's not finding all of these books? Like, how do you have stuff listed if you don't know where it is? And I guess I didn't think of it like that. The books that are on the floor are listed. My assumption always is like the stuff you have listed is separate. But he kind of explained how he has like books in a shed and books at his friend's garage and like books everywhere, and that would be so chaotic to me. I think I would have a panic attack every time there was an online order, because I'd be like, I don't know where this book is. And obviously there's, theft, you could have particular theft, but it's like a library too. Like sometimes people take a book off a shelf, are looking at it over here, and then they put it over here, but how do you know it's over there? It's not like they have little chips in them or anything, So that was interesting. I was like, oh. And then the till total, I think it was nice because it kind of gave its own narrative of like, look, like this is what it, like this prominent bookstore makes. This is how many customers were in. But at the same time, like I feel like maybe 20 entries in, I stopped even looking at any of that stuff because I was like, now this is redundant to me. And it's not, there's no like end goal in sight as far as what that does, but it kind of made me feel bad that they don't make that much every day. Cause I'm thinking, okay, so how many people did he have working that day? Like that's their salary. Like he's not making any money. And that in and of itself is mostly the point of having that there. But yeah. And I think the entries themselves were written well enough because they are short enough. They got straight to the point. They gave little, stories of the day and the people in them. And even though you only got small snippets of the people, like the more you read about them, the more rounded their personality became. Like you really understood them a little bit more. So yeah, I didn't mind it, but I didn't look at a lot of it again. Like I started to like skip over it because I'm just like, okay, I get it. Like orders not found, but all that kind of stuff. But yeah, let me see. Sadly, for me, probably happy for everyone else. I have. Oh, that's okay.
Well, you're working.
Yeah, we understand.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for coming. It was nice to chat with you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming, Allie.
Yeah. I think the money thing was kind of meaningless without greater context of the running costs Yeah, but I'm a nerd. No, I agree with you. Like, all I was thinking, like, the whole time was, like, I felt bad. Like, the whole time, I'm like, he's not making any money. How is he making any money? Because he would say, like, oh, I bought this collection for $300, and then the till total would be, like, $18. You're like, what the hell? So, yeah, I don't know. And miss shelving books at a library. Yes, it happens. I see it all the time. Now, I don't do that. I'm one of the people that will put the book, if I don't want anymore, on the end shelves where they ask you to put the books. But I have been in sections where I will be like, what is this nonfiction book doing in the romance section? And I will move it to one of those shelves. But yeah, people do it all the time. All the time, especially in the kids section. Oh, that's terrible. There is always
that was my
books.
Yeah, at the library, that was my favorite jobs, was doing shelf reading. And I would ask my boss if I could do certain sections if I noticed something was out of whack. And she'd be like, why? Like, there's stuff that's wrong. I found 3 mistakes. She's like, knock yourself out, you know? But also for us, at the end of every day, like between 3 and 4 p.m., all the hold requests for our specific library get printed out. And then the person who is doing the closing shift, who works in the back one of our pages, which is the job I had, would go around with a big cart and a pen, and you find everything you can, put it all in the cart, and you wheel it up to the librarians, and they check it all in and like trigger the whole process, right? So many people, depending on who was working, would not even try to find a book if it wasn't exactly where it said it was. Like the guy who trained me, Jim, who is still working there, he would go around and he'd be like, well, like, this book is called like Fortune and Glory, right? So he goes to the section, the author section, and it's not there, but you can see it a shelf down, like someone just put it back incorrectly. And I'm like, he's like, nope, it's not there. And I'm like, but it's here. He's like, no, it's in the wrong spot. It's not, it doesn't exist. And I was like, are you kidding? He said, no. And I kept moving. I was like, oh my God, what a dick. Like, just, it's right there. Like, just pick it up. And he wouldn't, and he still doesn't. And there's one other girl that was like that too. So sometimes I would say to the librarians, I'm like, were there ones out there that were just not found? And I would go find like half of them very easily, because they were just like a shelf over or whatever, misplaced easily enough. But and that was infuriating too. So like now when I don't get a book put on hold for me, I think, oh, I bet you that it was Jim working. And half the time I know I'm right. But it's just, that's infuriating. Like, come on.
Yeah.
We do have carts, like people can put them in any carts at my library too. People just would put them in any open space on a shelf, just lay them down.
Yeah. No, I find that all the time, especially in the nonfiction. Like, I feel like the nonfiction is so hard if you're looking for a book. Like especially when I was getting my master's degree, I was at the library a lot. Because I'm old school. I like to use books. I don't like to use a lot of online resources because I like books. That's how I originally, with my bachelor's degree, like, you went to the library, you looked for the book, you got your resources from a book. Like, I'm just old school, like super old school. And so I went to the library, and the nonfiction section, and it has to be patrons that do this, because it's numerical on how you find things. When people like pull it off of the shelf and look at it and decide if they want to take it or not, they do not put it back like exactly in the spot that it belongs. So when you go to look for books, like, you can't only look right there. You have to look at like the whole shelf, because sometimes like where the book is supposed to be, it's actually like 5 books over. So it's like, not only are you looking at the number, but I've learned for the nonfiction section is to find out what number category it is, and then just go up there and start looking at titles. Because if I'm looking for a specific title, I'll never find it, because it's always like, it's supposed to be here, but it's way down here. So now what I've done is, because of how nonfiction is set up, where it's like a category it's a number, just like designated number, I'll just go to that number section without an idea of what books I want, and I'll just look at the whole selection, because otherwise I'll be there forever just looking for the one book that I thought I needed, when there's a ton of books that are like similar.
Yeah,
it's so infuriating.
I know. And I will say too, like for my library too, that one of the last jobs of the night was to walk every single aisle and every single shelf with an empty cart and pull everything that was sideways or pulled out or like was very obviously misfiled, you just pull everything out and put it on the cart and wheel it to the back room. And either you had time that day and you put them all in order and you put them on the big carts that go back out that to be shelved, or you just left it there with like in a certain spot and everyone knew that this was the cart that you just put all the weird things on. But sometimes, especially in nonfiction, like you said too, people would come in and take like huge chunks of stuff, especially World War II nonfiction. Oh my God, like men. It's always older men. I think a lot of them were without housing. They would come in and like research something to death, and there would be piles and piles and piles of like 100 books shoved or just laying on the floor or open and like desks and everything. And it was like, oh my God, you'd have to go get like 3 or 4 carts and come back. And it was so infuriating. Like, I get that you're into something and that this is not your job, but it's like common courtesy for anything. Like if you unfold a shirt at Target, you don't want it, you kind of unfold it, you fold it similarly again, or you leave it like in the same area, like so someone else can find it. It's not destroyed or dropped in like the cooler section or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, really, dudes, really, it was so hard to find stuff then. Like, please, could you try, like, just try a little bit. You don't have to put them back on the shelf. If you don't want to, that's cool. But like, don't damage them. Don't twist the spine. Don't dog your everything to hell. Don't highlight stuff with a pink highlighter. Like, please just, no.
Oh my goodness. You can't highlight library books.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I would assume that would be like separate business-wise, but I mean, he has 2 books that are essentially the same, so that's got to be good. It's very interesting.
And he has that editing business too. Like, that helps too, you know, that filming editing thing.
Yeah, old school. Yeah, I remember, I think it was my junior or senior year of high school was when they officially started asking that papers were typed. At my school, at least. And I was like, I didn't have a computer at home, so I had to like come to school early, use my study halls, and use one of the 2 computer labs we had to like type up my papers or whatever. But yeah, I remember they used to just write them out, and when you made a mistake, you had to rewrite the whole page because you had to write it in black or blue pen. Yeah. Okay, so probably the last question we'll do on this particular book, unless anyone else has any other questions. But like, do you keep a journal? And then like, let's talk about it. Why or why not?
Like for book reading, you mean?
No, just journaling in general.
Yeah, I do. I used to be really religious about it for a long time, and I've tried different kinds of journals too, like doing gratitude journals and stuff. I do keep one though. Now it tends to be more like notes for my therapy sessions. Or sometimes I just give it to my notebook to my therapist, and I'm like, could you just write this down for me, please? She's like, no problem. She just keeps going. So that's what a lot of mine is now. I do sometimes journal stuff out, like if I'm trying to process. It was really helpful for me processing grief from my dad and my mom's first diagnosis. That was very helpful. I recently refound a journal from, like, I didn't journal that much then, but like the few times that I had, it was like, it's very hard to read. It's very shaky writing. And man, talk about hurt and anger. I mean, understandably, but wow. So yeah, I do that a little bit now too to help process through things because, I also do like brain dumps a lot, and that's sort of a journal too. So I'll do like just whenever random day, I feel like at like a Wednesday, I'll just do a big brain dump of stuff that I have to do, and then try to break it down into days in the next week or two, like just kind of, we'll just kind of put it here. So it is planning, but not totally. It's also getting crap out of my brain to a certain extent. I'm doing that a lot because I much stopped talking to all people the last 2 months. Dani, I know you have noticed. So has everybody else. I just can't, like, too tired, too overwhelmed. So I'm not talking to anybody. So I am journaling more about that. But yeah, it's not anything I go, well, it's 8 a.m. I'm going to do my morning pages. I tried that and I can't get into it. I don't do it every night before I go to bed. It's more like if I have insomnia, I wake up, I'll do it then. Or like mid-morning after I've had my first cup of coffee, I'm like, okay, let's get some crap out here, people. Like trying through the decks, see what's going on here. But yeah, how about you?
I mean, since I was a kid, I mean, I've been gifted journals. I have been gifted so many notebooks, and I will like start, and there might be like 2 or 5 pages in there, and then I just have no will to like write stuff, and I feel awkward too about writing stuff. Like I even tried to start like a little journal for when I was pregnant to like write down like what I was feeling, so like the kids would have something when they were older to kind of like see the, and like I had no like there's no will to do it. Like in my head I think I want to do it, but then when I start to do it, like I don't feel like I'm me when I'm trying to do it. Like I feel like I'm trying to present something. I don't know. It's so weird. Like I just don't feel like I'm myself when I'm like journaling. It doesn't feel right to me. I almost feel like I'm wasting time when I'm doing it. And I'm not to say that anyone else doing journaling this is a me thing. Like anytime. And I think the worst part too is like I have sometimes found like pages that I have written, and it literally makes me cringe. Like rereading like stuff that I've written in certain times of my life. I just think to myself like, oh my God, you are so pathetic. Like I hate you. Like, so I don't like to like leave evidence of myself, because I don't feel like when I journal that I'm really, not that I'm being like I'm not lying when I write things down, but it's like I'm putting on airs to myself, like, oh, today, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. It just never works out for me, especially when I go back and I find something. I'm just like, ugh, like, who are you talking to? Like, who is this? So it just never works out for me, ever. Yeah, my mom gives me a lot of journals, like, or notebooks that I could write in, and usually I use them for other things. But yeah, I'm not a journaler. I find it very hard, and which is funny because, you know, being a person who has dedicated a lot of their energy toward like an education that includes writing, you would think that journaling would be a good outlet for that, or a good stepping stone to writing more creatively. And it doesn't for me at all. But I feel like, you know, YouTube in general is a sense journaling. Like it is capturing parts of my life. So there's that, but yeah, I don't know. Whenever I sit down to like write something down in a journal, I just feel so awkward. Like I just don't. Yeah. And I think in the back of my mind too, I'm always like, I don't want anybody else to read this. And not that like it's not meant for anybody else, but I always feel like someone's going to read it. Someone's going to find it. And I just don't want my inner thoughts on display for anybody else. So I don't know. I keep a lot of stuff to myself, and I keep a lot of myself from myself in a sense by not journaling. Like I don't want to write it down. And I think I get too wrapped up in like everything like structured properly, grammatically correct, like even though it's just, it's just meant for yourself. Yeah. So no, I have a lot of like, yeah, I don't like doing it. It's weird to me. I think it's great that other people can do it because it really does appear to be very cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could have that for myself. Like, I wish I could sit down. Like, the biggest one that I wish I could do is like a gratitude journal. Like, I see a lot of people who do that and they get a lot of good cathartic, like, I feel like they grow a lot from that. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't bring myself to like sit down and do it. It really stinks. Cause I do like want to do it. But then when I sit down and I'm like, no, this isn't going to work. Like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, it will work. Number one. Two, who says you have to write in full sentences or do anything else? Like, none of my shit is grammatically correct or full sentences or anything. I just write stuff down. Whatever comes out, comes out. It's like 2-word sentences a lot of the time, just to get it out. Once I start to be perfect and expecting like it's going to be published someday, like I'm George Orwell or something, like no one's ever going to find this crap. And if they do, I'm dead and I don't care. And I need it for me to like help myself. So I did myself a salad and I was like, just blab, make a big mess, like scribble over pages. And like, it's okay. It's okay. I had to get it out. So all my stuff is real short stuff, not full sentences. So give yourself permission to just blab it out.
Yeah. Maybe. We'll see someday. Yeah. Looks like Andy mentioned having a blog, and but journaled as a teen. Yeah, as a teen, I tried a couple of times. I think I was gifted like a really nice leather-bound diary, and I think I wrote in there a couple of times. And it's, your typical like, I like Timmy, but he doesn't like me, and I wish I had a first kiss, blah blah blah. So, like, looking back at that stuff, like, when I find that, because I know I still have it somewhere, whenever I open that, that makes me both cringe and giggle, because it's like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But I definitely wrote more when I was a teenager, because I feel like because of, like, the media, like, movies that we saw and stuff like that, it just seemed like that was, like, a rite of passage. Like, oh, you have to journal is a big girl thing to do. So I think I did journal more as a young person. But the older I've gotten, anytime I look back and I see what I've written down, I'm like, ugh, it's making me, I don't like that person.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I used to blog too. It's technically still there. I just don't post on it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I keep thinking about that. Like, I should do something like that so that my kids have something that's, because I have found, the funniest thing that I found in a bunch of stuff my mom had, because she has always said that she waited until she had me to find out I was a girl. And I found this note from this like little letter that she had packed, because my mom keeps everything. It's literally a letter to me that she wrote while she was pregnant that literally says, "Today I found out you were a girl." And I'm just like, I found it in her heap of hoard stuff. And I was like, you have been giving me a hard time.
What the hell?
All this time about don't find out what your kids are until you be surprised. And you're a liar. You are a liar. She's like, oh, no, I was surprised. I must have wrote that down and then forgot about it. I was like, you don't forget what gender your baby is. So, anywho. Okay. Any other comments, questions, anything that you wanted to discuss about Diary of a Bookseller? Anyone? Let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to switch gears. Okay.
Run and grab. I just got an Amazon delivery. I'm going to grab it real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, go ahead. While she's doing that, I'm going to actually share my screen, because I'm just going to, because I don't have a physical copy of, I must have changed it, of the other book that I wanted to discuss, this is actually showing our book here, but I also read Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come. This was written by Jessica Pan, and it's An Introvert's Year of Living Dangerously. So this was one that we were going to pick from that did not win, but I wanted to read it anyways, so I did. And I read it via audiobook, and the audiobook is read by the author, which is nice. It's always nice when the author reads their work. But this is, so what would happen if a shy introvert lived like a gregarious extrovert for 1 year, if she knowingly and willingly put herself in perilous social situations that she normally would avoid at all costs. Writer Jessica Pan intends to find out with the help of various extrovert mentors. Pan sets up a series of personal challenges: talk, stand-up comedy, dinner party, etc. I might have to do this pretty quickly because, my son is waking up. So as far as I would say this book, I think I would give it like a 2-star rating. I don't feel like it definitely was more memoir-ish. The way that I felt like I thought this was going to go was that they were going to explain like how they did all these things. But a lot of the things were stuff like I would not do. I would not do any of these things to become an extrovert. Like she said, or like it says in this synopsis, like she does stand-up comedy, like very badly, but she works up to that. She like joins this improv group and they work up to doing stand-up comedy. She travels alone. There's a lot of things that she did that I was like, I didn't think that this is the way that this was going to go. Like, because it says Introvert's Year of Living Dangerously. And I thought it was going to be more of like, I don't know why, but like not so much a how-to, but more like these are the things I said yes to. But she is actively doing things. Like she was actively like talking to people in public, which makes sense. But like then like joining all these really crazy things. And I was like, this is really like, this isn't just taking one step. This is taking a huge giant leap toward like being a crazy and like extroverted person. Now at the end, she ended up with a group of friends, and realistically, that was her main goal, was to meet people. She lives in London with her husband, and just all her friends were out of country. So she really didn't have any close friends in the city. So it was a lot of trying to meet people and have really close like connections. I will say from reading the book, it kind of gave me a lot of insight about relationships in general, like, and how close they are and why they're close. And like the main thing that I picked up from her explanation was just the kinds of conversations you have with people and how a lot of them are super surface level. And the ones where you have really close relationships, they actually dig a lot deeper. And it made me think about like conversations that I have with what I would call friends. And I'm like, that is something to think about. Because I think in general, a lot of us, we do have friends that are seasonal. So, friends that we had years ago might not be friends now. And I wonder if that's because the conversations started to become very surface level, like, oh, how are you? Oh, that's great. How's your mom? Oh, that's great. And then like, that's all it is. It's not, how do you feel about that? Or, it's not digging deeper. So even though I gave it only 2 stars, I more or less did that because some of the stuff that happened or that she explains, I didn't feel like was really necessarily a part of this journey of hers. And then some of it was actually a little redundant. But I thought it was an interesting book. If you're interested in stuff like this, I definitely would recommend it. I think It just, for me, sat a little bit differently. But interesting nonetheless. And I did like that she read it herself for the audiobook, because it really helped you connect to her a little bit more. But yeah. I'd like to talk about it more, but unfortunately my son has like radar. Anytime like I really need them to be quiet, they wake up. So he just woke up. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. If you are interested, definitely pick it up. If you have Hoopla, you can get it for free on either ebook or audiobook. So, yeah. Anything else tonight, Laura?
Nope, not really. I should be wrapping some, but I'll go watch some more Vera instead.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yep, I'm going to go and probably feed him and hope he goes back to sleep. And I can see he's disturbing my daughter, so I better go soon.
Yeah.
And then watch the final 2 episodes of The Mentalist, because I've finally gotten through that whole series.
I should go back to that. I drifted away in like season 3 or something. I just never.
Ooh, it's so good. And then in season 6, like halfway through season 6, it's amazing. And then the rest of season 6 is super confusing. And then it's like, why is there a season 7 at all? Like, it should have ended in the middle of season 6. That should have been the last episode, or one more episode after that. And then it should have just been done, because it's a whole different show after that episode. Doesn't make any sense at all. So, but you know me, I have to finish it. So, oh my gosh. But okay, I have to go. He's really disturbing my daughter. She can hear him. So I better head off. But it was very lovely to chat with everyone tonight. So excited for you all to finish the year out strong. Hopefully you get all of your reading goals done and are able to spend time with family. And for those of you who may be mourning a loss from this year, I hope that you and your family can remember all of the good times you had with your loved ones. I know it's easier said than done. What's that?
Tough time of year.
It is a tough time of year, yes. So I hope you all have a good holiday and a restful holiday. And we'll see you all on the 2nd of January for some more fun.
Yep. Have a good start to December, and solstice, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Christmas, all the things.
Diwali.
Diwali, yes. Diwali.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, everyone. Bye now.